for the first time?
Shall I tell about that?
Well, I don't care. You
Grandma.
Grandma.
Your wife of 61 years.
How'd you
That
meet?
ain't that long? No, I don't believe it that long.
So how did you two meet?
I said, hi there, young girl. You're a cute looking girl. I'd like to take you out sometime. Yeah, I'll be right with you. She said, go home and get dressed.
Oh, Grandpa. We went to the same school.
Yeah,
he was a
different teachers.
grade or two, probably 2 grades
And
ahead
where
of
was
me.
that? Out here in
At
Poplar?
Poplar. But he liked my sister better than me to begin with.
Eleanor? Or?
Eleanor. He was in the middle room, and Eleanor was in
He'll come out
probably
now.
in the 2nd grade. And those kids would be let out of school, say, at 3:30. We had to go to school till 4.
Well, what grade were you in at this time? What
Well,
grade was he in?
Eleanor was in 2nd, I would be in the 4th grade, but I was still in the
You
middle
know this
room.
part good.
And,
It's coming.
and he was
And Grandpa
used to,
was a couple years old.
Oh,
or, well,
yes,
he was like
in,
7th grade or something.
he was about 7th grade, so he was in the room up above again, see. So we were all in different rooms. But Eleanor would be excused at 3:30. Then she used to walk over to my grandmother's and stay, Grandma Bong's, until the rest of us were through school, and we'd all walk home together. And when Eleanor would be let out at 3:30, Larry raised his hand, and probably with 2 fingers or 1 finger, that he had to go to the bathroom. And then
What did that mean? What did that mean?
Go do number 1 or number 2, whatever it was.
And then he knew that Eleanor would be let out, and he'd bring her a candy bar or a new pencil, and then she'd come home to my grandmother's, and Grandma said, "Where did you get that?" And Eleanor said, "Oh, there's such a nice boy at school. He just started school out here, and he comes down every day and gives me something." And then my grandmother told her, "Eleanor, don't take anything from boys that way." She said, "You mustn't do that." But then it wasn't long until later on when he started going with me, or he liked me. Maybe Eleanor had no more time for him, but she couldn't take it.
You get tired of the candy.
You were in the 4th grade, Graham?
No,
I was in the 4th grade.
And
He was
she
in
was
the
in 7th.
7th.
So then
Sixth.
when did you first go
Oh,
out?
I was 12 years
Oh,
old.
goodness.
It was Larry belonged to the Boy Scouts, and they were giving a party and a program, a little dance. They had dances those days, too, I tell you. And so they were having this party up in the old town hall here in Poplar. And my brother liked his cousin, Leona. She was living at home there with Auntie and
You like
Uncle.
Dad's cousin?
Dad's cousin, yes. And so Larry and Leona would walk with us probably a whole mile on the way to
I don't
our
think it was
house.
Leona, it was Grace.
Yeah, it was Grace, that's right. It was Grace. And then we'd walk back with them. And the roads were all red clay. And after the rain, then poor Larry's feet were all red clay. And Auntie had new shoes on him and dressed him all up. And he's all red clay by the time he got home. But we had a lot of fun. And from then on, we were living here at Poplar. And then when I was at school in Superior, then they used to come in, and he and Wallace Lamone, Evelyn Lamone's wife, and he liked my sister Eleanor. And we used to double date, and we had fun.
So when did you?
Had an old over 19 over.
How did Grandpa propose to you?
Oh Lord, we were engaged for 2 years.
Damn it, I got with you long enough now. We've got to do something about this.
We were engaged for 2 years.
When you were going to college, or?
Yeah, when I went to college, I got engaged.
What was Dad doing then? Farming?
Yeah, he was farming with Uncle.
Yeah.
But otherwise, he went to tractor school down in St. Paul before.
So then, when did you get married? What was your wedding day?
June 27th, 1927.
Oh, that's an easy day to remember.
Uh-huh.
What, do you remember anything special about it? About the
Yes,
day?
it was a hot, hot day. My folks lived at Webster, and Mama was having the reception down there. We were married in Duluth.
At the church, or what?
In the parsonage by a Lutheran minister.
What was his name?
Ekstrom.
Oh, Ekstrom.
Reverend Ekstrom. And Wallace Lamone and his sister were there too, but Adlai, the one that I tried to call. And Wallace and Eleanor were our attendants. and it was oh so hot. And we had the Ford with the no windows in it, you know, just the what you call roll-up deals on it. And it was so hot that we, going from Superior to Webster, we took our shoes off and stuck our feet out and we're driving along. Isn't that terrible? With our feet sticking out of the car. But it was really very, very warm. It's a poor time to get married. And then from there we went to Minneapolis for our honeymoon. But we were going to go that night. We were going to spend the night in Frederick in a motel or hotel. It was really just.
Speaking of getting married on your wedding night, did they have a chivalry or anything for you?
Oh, we went to yes that
yeah.
night down at Mom and Dad's. They had a chivalry.
So.
My sister Evelyn had made great big freezers full of ice cream, and it was kind of in moonshine days, so a lot of liquor was brought in.
Can you tell us what a chivalry
A chivalry
is? Or?
Well, that's when all the neighbors come in with pots and pans and and bow saws, and they make lots and lots of noise.
More noise, the better.
What was the object of that?
Make noise.
What was that?
What was the object of a chivalry?
Oh, it was just the welcome you, I guess. I really don't know. But everybody had chivalries. And when we moved back, when we came home from our honeymoon up to Poplar, we didn't want to have no chivalry. So we'd get in the car and we'd drive out every single night and park up on Rehnquist Hill up by Susie's there.
Let me sit here.
No, this is a continuation of when they got Mom and Dad got married.
The wedding dress.
And their wedding day.
Oh yes.
And the chivalry.
And the chivalry, and then the neighbor guys had taken the distributor cap or something off the car, so we couldn't go on our honeymoon any place else. So we stayed at home with Mom and Dad and slept in Mom and Dad's bed. And Mom and Dad moved upstairs. Then the next day we took the train to Minneapolis or St. Paul. And we stayed in a hotel. It wasn't a very spacious place. It was a nice hotel, and. My wedding dress, in those days things were in polyester, so my dress had to be pressed. And when I went to press my dress, the fuse, I'd taken my mama's iron down there, and it was too potent, I guess, for their electricity, and it blew the fuse. And pretty soon a rap at the door and said, "Were you using an iron or something?" I said, "Oh no, I couldn't tell them I was ironing." And so my dress never did get ironed. So then I had another dress, a dark dress. So that's why on my wedding picture I have a dark dress with a polka dot collar on. And then we went out to Larry's brother, Clarence. They lived in St. Paul. So then we'd go and visit them, and his dad was living with them. So we had a nice honeymoon. Come home, start farming, raising children.
My youngest brother was Marvin. And
what happened to him?
He was a terror. He would never pay any fare on the train. He'd always ride the tender, back and forth from Minneapolis to Superior, back and forth, back and forth. Now he had a little bottle on his hip. He died real young from
had pneumonia.
Not living right, drinking.
Shall I tell you a little episode?
I think he died from pneumonia.
Yeah, it was pneumonia. Yeah. Shall I tell you a little
I had
episode
pictures
about
of the
him?
whole family.
He worked in a logging camp all the time. And in those days, the logging camps were full of lice. And Gerald and Jeannie were babies, little babies. And he came home and they had no place to go, so of course he was always welcome at our house. So I gave him clean underwear and clothes and told him to go out in the toilet, our old outside toilet, and change his clothes. Well, instead, he went upstairs, and where did he throw his underwear? Into the hamper where our clothes were. And being busy with the children, I never noticed it till I come to bathe Jeannie one morning, and she had a big welt on her rib. And I thought, oh my gosh, what in the world? So I looked in her underwear, and sure enough, there was a great big louse. And so then I asked Marvin, where did you put the clothes? Didn't you put them in that boiler outside? No, he said, I put them up in the hamper upstairs. And did I have a time getting rid of lice?
Oh, boy, I can imagine.
Yeah,
the children's clothes had to be all boiled.
He drank himself to death.
Yeah, it was bad.
Oh.
It was so fun.
The young the young guy.
But in those days,
Sad.
the logging camps were always full of lice. They slept on straw and whatnot. Okay,
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. When you got back from, how long were you gone on your honeymoon then?
a week.
A week, and then you came back to Poplar to live? And where did you live?
With Auntie and at Uncle's farm, up on the farm up there. Not here, over in the farm.
No, didn't have.
And at this time, he was living there alone?
Yeah.
Yes, he was all alone. Grandpa had been living with him before.
So then,
He was a dear. He was so loved. I just loved him.
so how long did you stay there? Did he live with you?
He lived with us.
Until he died.
Yeah.
When did he die?
He died just before Glenn was born. He died in September. Glenn was born in November.
I see.
He had a ruptured appendix. That he died.
Yeah, he sure was a wonderful man.
So then you stayed there for
We-
how long up on that farm?
We lived there then for, after, we moved over here when the kids were about 5 years old.
Yeah, and
So-
this land right here, I believe it was.
Did you inherit the farm from him when he died?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then did you sell it or?
Well, we had a dairy farm. Had about 12, 15
15,
beautiful cattle, Guernsey cows. Yeah, Guernseys, weren't they? And then Depression days fell. And we didn't have large hay fields, enough to keep our cattle going, but that year it was a drought.
Hey,
And
really
no
tough
hay
depression,
at
I tell
all.
you.
And we sold one cow the year before for $125, which was an excellent price, really excellent. And then that year that we had the Depression, we couldn't buy hay. You couldn't get any hay at all or feed. The Jews from Superior came out and bought all the cattle for $75.
$6 a head.
And when they took them out of the yard, I cried. I thought, Lord of me, get that little bit of money for all those beautiful cattle.
Yeah, it was really-
And that was Depression days. So then from there, after that, then we had to sell the farm because you couldn't keep paying even the
Well,
taxes.
WPA was on, wasn't it?
Was great grandma
No,
there?
the WPA was after we moved over here. Then Grandpa came up, and Grandpa and Dad and Larry built the house over here that we're living in now. And it was wild land, not even a road in here.
So did you buy this land from somebody?
No, Larry had inherited it. His aunt and uncle had given it to him when he was little.
Yeah,
They owned this property before. And Larry inherited it. And we always kept up the taxes on this piece of land because it was little or nothing at that time. But our farmland, the taxes were high. And there was no work to be done. So then when we moved over here, then the WPA days came on. Then Larry started working on WPA.
yeah. And that lasted for a
Then after
couple of years.
he worked at the canning center down here.
In Poplar.
Cannery,
And you worked down there too?
I worked it just for a short time, and then the county agent asked if I wouldn't take over canning center in Superior. That was during the war. It was preservation of foods, and they opened this canning center in Superior. So I supervised that until they closed it.
Which was how
That was
long?
4 years. And that was only for 5 months. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was a lot of
Yeah,
work.
windmill.
And Grandpa was working then at the coal dock. Not the coal dock,
Section.
elevator. Honey, you were at the elevator when I worked at the
Yeah,
canning center.
elevator intersection.
So did you two drive back and forth together?
Hmm. Or Grandpa drive with somebody because he sometimes worked at night. So we'd pass each other in the road. We had a pretty good car at that time. I dared drive. And then he'd come home and sleep, and then he'd take off at night. And it was something we were both working though. Then when the city closed the canning center, during this time of the canning center, doctors' wives and anybody came up there to can. And then Mrs. Lohmiller used to come up there and can.
Who was
And
she?
she was a doctor's wife in Superior then. And she used to come up and can. And she was a lady that liked to can. And so they thought this canning center was going on forever. So she took all her cans and put out in boxes out in the backyard. And she was hanging clothes, and the garbage men came by and they said, oh, she said, throwing away all these cans, she must be quitting canning. And this woman says, I don't know, I only work here. It was she that had done it, but she couldn't tell me it was she that was throwing her cans away. And to this day, I have people come and say how they enjoyed the canning center, especially the pork and beans.
What?
When they born,
Well, that's
What about
way back.
that?
Oh, Grandpa, when the twins were born, it was a real blizzard. We lived home on the farm. You couldn't get out of the roads with a car because it was all snowed in.
What time of year was this?
February 13th when I went to the hospital.
What year?
At 19... When you were born.
Yeah.
1927.
Eight.
No, 28. Not 27. That was you were 1928. And and
That's
then
after the World War.
that day I had Sunday we had been over to the neighbors, and she'd had sardines, and I loved sardines, and I had eaten 2 sardines. Well, that night then we walked from their place over to our place, and I became
And you were living
ill.
here, Mom, huh? You were living here?
No.
Oh, you weren't
over
living
at
here.
the farm.
Oh, at the farm.
And I took ill that night, and I didn't feel good then all that next day. And then about 8 o'clock, Grandpa went down and got my grandma with a horse and the
Went to the
sleigh.
hospital.
Grandma was an old midwife, but she
funny
thought,
enough.
Larry thought, well, she'll know better. And he called the doctor, and the doctor had said,
Oh,
well, when
nuts.
was she coming in? And Larry said, well, she was coming in Monday for a checkup. That was going to be my, the one checkup, because I did go in there every once in a while for a checkup. Well, he said, if she's having pains, you better bring her in. Blizzard out was just horrid. And so Larry had made arrangements for my cousin, C.O. Lindquist, that owned the garage at Poplar, if he would take us in. And so we called him, so he said sure. So then uncles and the neighbor, Martin Johnson's father, well, it's Herman Johnson, came over with a team of horses, sleigh, hay in the bottom of the
Isn't that
sleigh.
neat?
No,
Going by the
And
sleigh.
we got to Poplar, and CO had the car all ready, and that was about 9 o'clock, and the twins were born. No, 10 o'clock when we got down there.
The doctor
And,
had-
in the nighttime, 10 o'clock, and my poor dear Dr. Knox, he'd been my doctor when I was little. He was still my doctor when the twins were born. And when I got to the hospital, he'd been there, and it's laying on the cot waiting for us. And so he said, yeah, it's going to happen. So that night, about 2 o'clock, the twins Jeannie was born at 5 minutes to 2, and Gerald was born at 2. And
He asked me if I wanted to go in the room.
Delivery room?
Delivery room, and I said I'd like to, so I went in and seen the proceedings.
And what'd you think?
And Jeannie was married, born first. I said, well, Doc, I said, the wife gets her wish. He says, wait a while, Mr. Lindahl. He said, maybe I can help you out. What the hell you talking to? Say that, but I thought to myself, let this young man come.
Oh, you didn't know you were going to have twins?
Oh,
No. Well, then he said, well, Larry, he said, that's done all I can do for you.
Pretty good.
Did you say, I think you did enough?
Really?
Yeah.
the
That was
sister that
funny. Never dreamed we'd have twins, you know.
the sister that prepared me for the delivery room never dreamed I had twins. She had to go in there herself and see for sure that I did have.
And didn't you say the doctor made the comment he thought it was nice for fathers to
Oh
see?
yes,
Yeah, that she was-
and in those days, fathers were never
Not
allowed
allowed.
in the delivery room.
No, he was a nice doctor.
But he said to me, if more fathers seen what the mother goes through, there'd be less children. And
Well, I think that was common sense.
in the
He was-
hospital,
Yeah, I
they were
remember.
born on Valentine's Day. So in the hospital, they were called Valentine and Valentino.
Oh,
Oh, they should have kept those names.
Do you think so?
Let's go Valentine.
Let's go Valentino.
Then I liked Donald and Dorothy. I thought, oh, that's such a
That's
pretty
cute,
twin name.
Donald and Dorothy.
But I had
too.
Donald and Dorothy when I taught school. They were little devils. So I couldn't name them that. Then I liked Earl and Earlene. But then there was an Earl that I didn't like at all either, so that was out. Well, then I called them Gerald and Geraldine.
My mother thought that was
And
so
Jeannie
cute for
didn't
twins.
like,
Gerald
Geraldine
and
didn't
twins.
like the name Geraldine, so she always went by Jane. But now to this day, I think she kind of likes the name Geraldine.
So everybody calls him Jerry and
And the
Jeannie.
twins called each other Gigi.
Oh, yeah.
It was always Gigi. And Jeannie and Glenn would, Jeannie be punished for doing things, and that she and Glenn were always more into mischief or argue. And Gerald was a peacemaker. And then Gerald would say, Ma, It's not Gigi's fault, it's Glenn's fault. He'd always stick up for his twin.
Were they healthy when they were little
Oh,
babies?
darn right.
Well, the little
Yeah,
girl,
you really
Jeannie, they didn't expect to live.
Yeah, you're not.
She was bathed in olive oil from February till May.
What was that supposed to do?
It got water shocked her. She'd go into a shock and just stiffen out when I put get water on her. So then she was bathed in that, and there too she really lost weight. They weighed 5 and 5.5 pounds, so they were big babies.
Who weighed what?
Jeannie was 5 and Gerald was 5.5. But Jeannie went down to less than 4 pounds before we left the hospital. In those days, they kept you in the hospital for 2 weeks.
That's true.
Yeah. And then Reynold Erickson's mother, Reynold, she's a year older than the twins. So his mother had taken him into Dr. Knox, because she had Dr. Knox too. And she said, I'd just been up to the Lindahls and seen the twins. And the doctor surprisingly said, do you mean to tell me that little girl lived?
Oh.
But they were healthy kids, I should say.
And then when my father came along,
Yeah, when was Glenn?
Oh, then, yes, then Glenn came along.
Is that 18 months later, was it about?
Something like that, a little over 2 years.
Oh, he was a lively baby. Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
And he had such
Getting his
pretty
jump
curly
pretty
hair.
over
He
the
looked more like a
body.
little girl than a boy. And I'd take him places, and oh, what a pretty little girl. Until finally I had to cut those curls off. And 'cause he was a little live wire too. And it was like raising, when I went to the hospital, the twins wouldn't go potty for my mother. They did everything in their diapers again. So when I come home, I had to train. I guess I got trained instead of them got trained. And they used to be so bashful. We had company, but always some. We had lots and lots of company. But my cats make me think of my kids. When people would drive in the yard, they'd run behind the house and hide. And pretty soon they'd come and peek around the corner. And I said, it makes me think of my cats. They run when people come.
Meow.
Yeah, meow.
Yeah.
But the twins were always very, very close. And my mother always called Gerald the peacemaker.
She always thought he was going to be a
Always
minister.
peacemaker.
Did you think he was going to be a minister?
Well, yes, she liked if he was going to be a minister. Because he was always a peacemaker. Always could find something good and make the twins, the other two fight. Quit fighting.
so what else do you want to tell us? Do you remember when your parents died?
Oh, yes. My father, I was working up at the high school. I was cook up at a high school. And Mom and Dad always came here and stayed from November till March. As soon as it got nice weather, we'd take them back down to Webster because they couldn't get home fast enough. It was rough moving when you're old people and have to go live someplace. You always have to get home. And Daddy and my brother-in-law, Bill, had gone to town, and they got stuck in the snow, and Papa got out and pushed, and he ruptured or hurt himself in some way that he had prostate trouble afterward, and so he was going to have surgery, and he was in the Siren Hospital, but they took him down to Madison, and when they had in surgery, he died uncontrollable bleeding.
And what year was that? Or do you remember how old he was?
Daddy was 82 years old. Then Mother sold the place down there, or moved from the place and went and lived with Evelyn. And but they still kept up the home place. They were renting it out or letting other people live in there. And then after Evelyn sold the place, and then Mama went and lived with Evelyn until she passed away. But she had heart attacks after. She lived 5 years after Daddy died.
So how old was she when she died?
77.
You know, that for their era, that was a good lifespan. And I think stress makes all the good difference in the world.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you remember when your dad died, Grandpa? He was living with Clarence, you said?
Down at St. Paul. You went down to the
It
funeral.
was Clarence or not? Yeah, I went down to the funeral. I went down to the funeral.
Do you remember when that was?
I was trying to think.
I don't know how he died.
Art and Mabel and Larry went down for his funeral. But the kids were small, so I stayed home.
So it was after the kids were born.
Oh, yes. They must have been about 4 or 5 years old,
And you were living here, though?
Yeah, we were living up over on the farm.
So it was before you came over here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's about it.
He had cancer.
He had cancer.
I remembered meeting your mom. I thought we came home on our honeymoon.
Mother didn't have cancer.
No, I said I remembered meeting
Oh,
your
meeting
mother.
my mother.
I had the
yes.
opportunity. She was so sweet, and I still have that hanky she gave me.
Oh, yeah.
She said, "Dear, I want you to have this hanky." She was
Mother,
so sweet. She was very ill then, and that was in '53, August 1st. So she didn't live long after that,
No,
did she?
No, after Daddy died, it's just like she gave up. And she had several strokes. And what bothered me most was that she lost her speech.
So that was probably in '54, maybe, Mom, huh?
And she loved to visit. I guess she talked as much as I did.
She's sweet.
But she loved to visit and loved people. And then she lay there in the hospital and couldn't talk. But it must have been around 3 years that she wasn't able to talk. But she lived there at home with Evelyn.
I bet she could sure still communicate.
You know, now I'm sorry I didn't ask her more questions. Really. You know, as you grow up, you think, that doesn't mean nothing.
No.
It's true.
But it does mean a lot.
Did they ever talk about, did your grandparents ever talk about when they came over here from Sweden, about the trip over? Or your...
Oh, there were hardships on the, it was a long time to come over.
They never talked about why they came over, what was
Well,
happening over there?
this was the golden country, you know, everything was...
Land of opportunity. Everybody wanted to come to
Yes.
We
America.
got gold on the street.
And we spoke Swedish at home all the time because my grandparents lived at home there with us. And so my sister Evelyn, when she started school, couldn't speak a word of English. And to this day, I try to speak Swedish a little bit, but it's going away. But
You kept up with a lot of the good, cute, like little prayers and things, you know.
Yes,
And,
Gerald was saying a Swede prayer at the table. He said, "Mother, let's say the Swede one." He's trying to memorize it over again. When Jeannie's up here, she always goes through the whole thing. Yes, nam går vi till bord, äter och dricker på Guds ord. Gud till er oss till gang, så får vi mat i Jesu namn. Amen. And we went to Sunday school in Swedish, and I started confirmation in Swedish in Superior at the Pilgrim Lutheran Church. And I'd come home from church and I'd say, "Mama, what does this mean? How do you pronounce this?" And my mother got so tired of telling me. She said, "You're not getting a thing out of your confirmation." She said, "Next Sunday you go to your English class." So I went and talked to the pastor. So then I continued on English, but Eleanor and I guess, were the only two that were confirmed in English.
Do you remember, Grandpa, did your grandma remarry your Grandma Carrie? I thought
Oh, no.
Didn't
yeah,
someone
she
remarry a
uncle.
Nelson? a Nelson?
Uncle Adolf. Yeah, she married Adolf.
No, not your auntie.
that
How about your grandma?
Grandma
Oh, Grandma Nelson married
Nelson?
Nelson. Yeah, he used to clerk at one of the stores in Bunny's Park on Iowa Avenue for years. And boy, people liked him. They wanted to be waited on. They always wanted Nelson to wait on.
Hello, baby.
And then because he was quite a bit younger than she was, I think.
Oh yes, yeah. Grandma was, Grandma was old, quite a bit older. Very good.